I'd like to invite Duncan Wood, our production manager, and give us a report on our time in the United States.
As you probably heard, Ellie and myself went over to USA to be part of what's called the NRB conference, which is the National Religious Broadcasters Conference in America. It's been going for many years, about 30 years. And it's a huge collection, one of the biggest Christian conferences in the United States. And it was big, but it was bigger than I thought it was going to be. It was quite amazing. When we went there, it was in Nashville. And of course, Nashville has a bit of a warm spot for me because I'm in the music industry, and Nashville has a lot of wonderful recording studios there. So it was a pretty exciting place to be. But when we got there, it was at the the Gaylord Opryland Resort and Convention Centre, which is a big name, and it's a big place, I tell you. So let's see if we can get this PowerPoint working. Okay, it's me. So this is the logo they had on the website. If you want to go look at more about it, you can go to the website. It's just nrb.com. And National Religious Broadcasters, over 4,300 people actually attended the conference this year. That's a mixture of people holding stalls and people who actually decided just to come because the public can pay and come along. And it's at the resort. This is the front of the resort, if you can see that. It's a beautiful place, very old American style. But if you look behind it, you'll see those big glass sort of peaks behind it. The whole hotel is actually, it's like being in a biosphere. It's full of these glass atriums. So this is the from inside the actual resort, where there were some restaurants. I'm just turning you off, Ellie, you're fitting back. And that picture on the right is actually one of the restaurants underneath the glass canopy. It's an amazing hotel, and it has 2,800 rooms that hold 4 people. And so this is it is the largest hotel in America that doesn't have a casino, which is a big claim to fame for it. So it's a beautiful place. You can see this setting. It's almost like being in heaven. All those windows around the side are actually the rooms. So people's rooms look into the area where we were staying. I'm just showing you to show you the scale of this place. It's quite amazing. That's one of the glass canopies. There's 3 big glass canopies covering the whole area where you live. And when we were there, it was winter. So it was actually about -9 degrees outside the glass. But inside, it was a very comfortable 25 degrees. So it was quite amazing. You could walk around just in a normal shirt. And if you forgot to put your coat on when you went outside, it got quite cold. So just to give you a scale, this is one of the lobbies of one of the convention rooms. And to give it more scale, here's a picture of Ellie standing in front of that lobby. So as you can see, that's just one of the lobbies which goes to one of the ballrooms. There's actually a bigger one than this. We were in the master ballroom. So it's quite amazing. On the Sunday we arrived, the conference hadn't started, so Ellie and I went into town in Nashville to look at Broadway and have a look around just to see what the place had on offer. And that's Ellie and I there in one of the bars. We weren't drinking, we had lunch there. And then down the street there was this fruit shop and candy shop selling, they're actually candy apples. And they're the size of your fist, these apples. They're humongous. We didn't buy one, we wouldn't have eaten it. And as you can see, it was quite cold when we were there, so it's an amazing place. And of course, we found this shop, which Ellie thought was the ideal shop. If you can't read that, it's called True Religion brand jeans. It's a jean shop called True Religion. So Nashville is the heart of the Bible Belt, and it's centred to all the main areas. It's only about 300 miles to Florida, 300 miles to Memphis. It's a very central location. So it really is the buckle in the middle of the Bible Belt in America. So here's a little video. I'll just show you this. That's the actual floor of the convention. There was many exhibitors there, several hundred exhibitors.
Yes, he is. He's actually launching in America. We already actually exist in other parts of the world, but America is such an important area and such a big group of media people who are broadcasting to the world that we have to be here. And so this is a great opportunity to expose what we're doing to the American audience.
I think for me, I had honestly my first year at NRB, and I had no idea how big this was at all. They just asked me to come speak yesterday on mass media, and I just found, the wonderful thing I loved about it is everybody's so warm here, and it's just really nice to talk to people about things that they really believe in. It's a little bit differently in Hollywood, where I come from. So usually they believe in themselves more than they believe in what they're making.
We've been to NRB many times, and we're grateful for the connections that we make here. You're encouraged because so many other people are in your world walking the same paths. You have the same challenges on a regular basis, and so just encouraging one another.
We believe prayer works because we've experienced it in our own lives. We grew up in a praying home. We're at a praying church. All the things that have happened with our movies has been a result of answered prayer. It's not that prayer doesn't work. It's that people oftentimes don't really have a genuine, intimate walk with the Lord.
Coming to conventions, and what I like about the conventions, the most I like is meeting new people, making new friends, and sharing the same passion with others. Hearing other people's testimonies in the ministry, what they go through, gives me a lot of hope and encouragement. And because I share in their suffering, I share in their dilemmas and obstacles that they face. So it tells me that I am not doing this alone. We are God's army, and we are doing this together.
One of the things I love about conventions is that this is a bringing together of a lot of different minds, a lot of different ideas. You get to learn about a lot of new technologies because, the cutting edge are going to be coming to things like this. So for dinosaurs like me, it's good to be able to learn some new things, and you do that at conventions like NRB.
To the next slide. There we go. And the Australians, we all went in force. There was actually 9 ministries who all went together to be part of what they call Australia Presents. So we were one of the only countries who was doing that. There were some people there from the Ukraine and Russia and some from other places, but we're the only united stall. This is the Australian stand, pretty simple. And of course it has the old outside dunny, as it were, as the symbol. That's actually where that screen is. It's meant to be an outhouse. So that's a bit of the Australian thing that the Americans relate to. And we had the Australia Presents signs up, a couple of tables there on some grass. Very simple stand, but very effective. Thankfully, because of the people who were involved, we weren't tied to this stand, but we were there often to try and talk to people. And on the screens, I had 4 screens around there. They had a little 1-minute video that we put together to show them what we were about, each ministry was about. So that's the stand a bit more, the screens and the actual Australia Present stands as well. So it was a very powerful place to be. We were right in the middle, right next to the coffee lounge, actually. So a lot of people got to walk past and see. And we were giving out the Jesus Only books and business cards and videos and all that stuff that we do to a variety of people. Pretty much anyone who was interested talked to us, and a lot of people were, actually, which was pretty amazing. We were in good company. The 9 ministries that were over is Australian Christian Television. They were there. Beyond, the 4B Network, us. And then, of course, there's Heritage Films, Olive Tree. There's Lutheran Media, Yes He Is. And what's the last one? I can't read that from here. Oh, the Catholic Guy, that's right. So that was the first time the Catholic Guy actually went to this conference because they are realising they need to tap into a bigger world. So for us, our original intention for going to this conference was actually to strengthen up our connections with the Australian ministries. So all these main players here are serious about what they're doing. And for us to be there was a powerful thing because it actually is guilt by association. They know that we're serious. And we made some amazing contacts and friends actually while we were there, which will start to be long-term relationships for us. Now, Yes He Is a very large ministry. They're a very lucky ministry because they have a patron who pays for everything. They don't have to chase up any money at all. It's all paid for. And Yes He Is, if you go to their website, it's quite powerful. They have amazing videos, amazing content. And we had dinner with them, and they've actually allowing us to use some of their content for some of our broadcasts as well, which is fantastic, free of charge. That will actually up our production value a little bit further as well, because there's some very good videos and very good content, all professionally made overseas. So we're looking forward to do it. We're going to have a meeting with those guys. And also they've got a possibility of a studio up on the Sunshine Coast that we may be able to use as well. We'll talk on that later. We've only got to meet and find out first. But all those opportunities were there. There's a lot of independent people there as well. As a filmmaker who was there, Australian guy. He came up and talked to us all. He's a producer as well. And it was just great meeting these people. It was a pretty powerful place to be for us, time-wise. It's going to give us access to a lot of things through even America and over in Europe, Ukraine. There's ways of getting our media out there, and everyone who saw what we did were very keen. Upstairs in the other part of the actual convention centre, they had this room set up for Australia Presents. And we had these little alcoves set up, a little curtain there with our sign, and that's where we could actually meet people. So we could organise meetings, take them upstairs and sit in this little alcove area and have a chat. There was coffee and tea laid on by the group there from CMA. And it was a great place to actually hook up every morning with the rest of the Australians and have a good chat. So we really created some very strong bonds. What was also good, when we went to the Gold Coast conference last year, a lot of those guys were at this conference. So once again, they go, oh, how you going, Ellie? How you going, Duncan? They know who we are now. And we'll be going to the Gold Coast conference again next month, actually, I think it is. So we're looking forward to catching up with all those guys. So probably the main thing to say is for us, the presence of being at NRB was a very strong one. It really gave us a higher reputation. It gave us a much bigger credibility on the international scale as well. A lot of the Americans talked to us. We were talking to the guys from Dunham & Co. Rick Dunham himself spent some time with us in that little room there, chatting about opportunities that can happen in different places. So we're pretty excited about that. So I'll probably wrap it up there. Pretty simple. Any questions, come and ask me later on. But I'll hand you back to Eliezer, who's going to give us a report from his overseas trip. Thank you.
Good, thank you very much, Duncan. It's show and tell afternoon, isn't it? Actually, it's as a direct result of this trip and a meeting that we had that will be broadcasting very soon on Christian television in Kenya at a miraculously low rate. So many good things happened. And thank you, Duncan. You represented us well there. Okay. I want to give you a report from the war zone, from the front lines of the conflict. Let me set the scene for you from the book of Ephesians, chapter 6, verse 10. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armour of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, against the spiritual forces of evil in heavenly realms. So Ukraine is a country that's at the front lines, I believe, of the battle between good and evil. It's being wrecked economically at the moment through rampant inflation. Alcoholism is absolutely throughout the country. So is drug abuse, in addition to being at the military front lines of a war that is currently happening. This is a photo of a monastery that was in the city where we went to preach. And, okay. And this isn't moving forward. As you can see, even though it was early spring, there was still some snow there. And that makes me very happy because we don't get any snow here in Australia, so I just love to see it. And these are some photos of just the people that came to the program. For many of the nights, and not just on the opening nights, we had full houses, and we were running 2 programs every day. We even got a little bit of local media attention. There's Philip being interviewed. And the local people who were supporting the program, they after every program, they had a little bit of a health segment. And the lady you see there in white is a local medical doctor who did free cholesterol tests, high blood pressure tests, and even led the people in doing exercises. which was, I did film it on my phone. It was quite funny to see. I won't show it to you, but it was a lot of this sort of stuff, and it was great. And so it was a well put together program. Everyone did what they could. Here's just a lady who is giving an anti-stress massage to one of the guests from the community. So, if you couldn't speak up the front, you couldn't sing, well, you could always, lay onto someone's shoulders and give them a good anti-stress massage. So there was a lot of that happening as well. There was a bit of this happening as well. That was me in full flight. We had an interpreter, of course, because my Russian is improving, but it's nowhere near good enough. There's 2 languages in Ukraine, Russian and Ukrainian. Of course, with the current war that is happening, people liked that when I said a few words in Ukrainian to them. However, we presented the programs in Russian, and this man was our translator. And some days he was translating 6 times for us. We were giving 6 presentations, and he was absolutely exhausted. And so I took a few snaps of him while he was unconscious in sleep. This is a photo of refugees. These are the representatives of 100 refugee families. The city where we were in Poltava is about 250 to 300 kilometres away from the front lines of the current war. And so even though it's a city of about 300,000 people, it had an influx of around 10,000 refugees in recent months. And so we met with and we ministered to these refugees in different ways. These were people who had left their homes after their apartments had been shelled, in some cases completely destroyed, and their relatives killed under the rubble. And they had witnessed all kinds of atrocities, bodies unburied for days, and then just bodies being buried in their front yards of their apartments. And of course the loss of loved ones. In many cases they had fled their homes with nothing or almost nothing. And here in this photo you see the representatives of 9 refugee families who were attending our program. This was on the final day of the program. And you can see that there were many children. At the back you see myself and Dr. Rodionov. We met with these people. These people were all responding to the beautiful gospel message. Imagine that. What wonderful hope that we were able to give them. However, we also were able to... these are the children at the program, and one of the days they presented some songs for us. Many of those children are the beautiful children of these refugee families. Here you can see that they're holding a copy of Jesus Only that they received from us. And we've left adequate supplies of the book Jesus Only there in Ukraine so that the ministry to refugees who continue to flood into the city can continue, and as many as possible of them can receive the book Jesus Only. At that time, we also gave the refugees, these are just some of the representatives of the families, a monetary gift from Good News Unlimited, which they appreciated very much. This lady, oh no, she's not there. Her name is Ludmila. When I gave her this gift, she said to me, in Luhansk, which is a city which has been taken over by the forces against which Ukraine is fighting, she said, in Luhansk I used to be a businesswoman. I'm ashamed to take this gift. I will work hard and be a businesswoman again and repay this money to you. And I said to her, it is a gift, just like salvation in Jesus Christ. You will never need to repay it. This young man was a refugee who was baptized at the end of the program. There were 4 such refugees who were baptized. I just love this photo. Look at the joy in his face. This man is called Ruslan, and here you see him with Dr. Rodionov and myself. Here he is in his office. He's got lots of certificates behind his office. He runs a drug rehabilitation centre He's a Christian. And his drug rehabilitation center is unique in Ukraine because it is the only one in Ukraine that works in conjunction with a hospital, government hospital. In other words, works together with the government. But he runs a program there to rehabilitate hard drug users using gospel principles. And he preaches and teaches the gospel and Christian principles to these men. And even though the government have told him to stop, his clinic is so successful that he has said to them, no, I will not stop. And so we met with him. This is outside the drug rehabilitation clinic that he runs. He has had thousands and thousands of men who have come through his clinic. Many hundreds of them have done the full program and today are clean from drugs. Here he is. I want to tell you a little bit about his story now. Well, by the way, here we are meeting with some of the men who attend there. All of these men are either drawn to Christianity or have converted to Christianity because of the witness of Ruslan and this drug rehabilitation centre. So we were able to minister to them. 4 of these men attended our program and requested baptism. Now, the men you're looking at, they're not people who you normally bump into the street here in Australia or whatever country you're in. You're looking at very hardened criminals in many cases, former criminals, ex-Russian mafia, people who have served long time in very, very long jail sentences. And it was just a blessing to be able to minister there with them. So let me show you now, go back to Ruslan and tell you a little bit about his story. He's kind of like the Robin Hood of thieves, if you like. He grew up in a Christian home, and his mother tried to, when I say a Christian home, a home where he learned some Christian principles, but it was a very troubled home. In fact, he was sent away from his parents. He lived for years with his grandmother because there was a lot of alcoholism and problems in his family. He felt very unloved, very rejected, and at the age of 5, he started having very scary dreams. So his mother took him to a psychiatric hospital, and they prescribed some very hard psychiatric medications. He became addicted to them from the age of 5. At the age of 12, his mother realised that something was wrong with him because he was losing the ability to attend school and all sorts of things because of his addiction to these drugs and the effects they were having on his mind. So his mother took him off the drugs, and he went through cold turkey withdrawal. He suffered a lot. Because he felt very unloved at home, and his home was really a broken home, he grew up on the streets. And by the age of 16, he discovered that heroin could replace the feelings that he had when he was younger, taking these prescribed psychiatric drugs. And as a result, he became addicted to heroin. And Ukraine is a very poor country. There's no money to buy heroin. And one of the few, unless you're very, very wealthy, the only way in which you can maintain a dependency on heroin is to become a criminal. So he became part of a criminal gang of armed robbers. They did everything really, from pickpocket to violent assaults. And in fact, he says they travelled the length and breadth of the countries of the former Soviet Union and across Europe committing their crimes. He used to commit his crimes when he was high on heroin. So he recalls that he would jump, enormously high fences just because he thought he could, and then land on the other side. And he just says, we would just sit on the ground knowing no one else could jump that fence. But because he knew something about God, he thought that he could get away with all these crimes because God was with him. God helped him jump that fence, for example. So the little he knew about God, he thought, I'm a good man because I rob from the rich. I take what I need for to maintain my life, which was his drugs, and I don't rob from the poor. So, God can't be upset with that, and he helps me. He gives me strength, and I get away with terrible crimes. Well, he didn't get away when he was arrested during an armed robbery on the apartment of the chief architect of a city there in Ukraine, and he was sent to prison. And as they investigated his past, they uncovered other crimes, far more serious crimes. He didn't specify what they were, but he knew that they merited the death penalty. So you can imagine they were very serious crimes. And he was very, obviously there in prison, he decided that he needed to turn his life around. He decided that he had always believed in God in some way, but he needed to find God for himself. So he took to reading the Gospels, and he understood the gospel message there through the work of the Holy Spirit in his life. He gave his life to Jesus Christ, and what he prayed for the most was that he would be let out of jail and not receive a jail sentence. This was before his trial, and particularly that he would not face the death penalty. Well, God heard his prayer to the extent that even though he believed some of his crimes did come to light, he didn't face a death penalty, but he did go to jail for some years. He didn't know why God had allowed him to go to jail, but he committed himself to doing God's work while in jail. So he started studying the Bible with other prisoners. He started helping other prisoners who had drug dependencies. He started doing as much as he could and trying to live a Christian life there in prison. After some years, he was actually let out early. He says, I'm the only person whom I know who has ever been let out early from a sentence in Ukraine. And he believes that was God's work. And as he went out into the community to continue doing God's work, he founded this drug rehabilitation centre based on Christian principles. And he encouraged the men who were there to attend our program, the program that we were running every day there for 2 weeks, where we presented the gospel. Philip presented evidences and reasons why it is valid to believe, and I presented more biblical spiritual meetings squarely on the gospel. And he was overjoyed that a good number of his men attended our programs, and then that some of them had requested baptism. And he, when we parted and we hugged, he was looking forward to working, to finding ways in which he could work more closely with Good News Unlimited in the future. And straight away, I know one way we can help him with some resources. We have a wonderful book translated into the Ukrainian language called Jesus Only, and that's only for starters. This man's name is Alexander. He was baptized at the end of the program. He, like the majority of men in Ukraine, was an alcoholic. And he had a huge problem with alcohol. His first wife cheated on him and, in fact, had a child with another man. He was furious, and he wanted to do very bad things to her. But in the end, he didn't, and they divorced. Her body was found a few years later by the side of the highway near where I interviewed him, and she had been murdered. Well, he married another woman, and at first all seemed to be going well. Of course, he was still very heavily dependent on alcohol. He decided that he needed to stop alcohol and smoking, and he did, all by himself. Now he recognises that it was God leading him and guiding him. He started to hear rumours that his second wife was cheating on him as well. He became very angry at this, and he set up a trap to discover if this was true, and he caught her in the act. And she denied it, but then he caught her in the act again, a second time. He was furious. He was ready to kill her. He had a knife in his hand. And he said to her, "You didn't want to solve this the easy way, now I'm going to do it the hard way." And as he lunged with the knife to plunge it into her, he says suddenly his hand went completely weak and limp, and the knife flew out of his hand. And he left the room where she was. Now he believes that was God's doing, because God had a better plan for him. A little time after that, someone invited him to a church that was supporting the program that we were running. And he came, and he was invited to come to our program. And when I interviewed him, he thanked God because he could have been a murderer twice over. And he could see how God had guided him in his life to the point where he came to the program. And now he was being baptized. He understands and loves the gospel. He says, at first when I came to your program, he said, I don't like to read. I never did like to read. I found it frankly hard to understand. But my friend said to me, keep coming and God will open up your mind. And he says, and God did. And I find it wonderful. I understand the gospel now, and he's been baptized. The funny thing is that when at his lowest point, where he had no one to ring before he came to this church, he remembered that the only person whom he thought he really could trust had been his teacher at school. Now, he's in his 50s now. Because he remembered that she had been a Christian. So he rang her, and it was she that invited her to church, and then who encouraged him to come to the program. Here he is, being baptized. And this is on the day of his baptism. This is Philip and myself there. This is Alexander, or Sasha in Russian. And guess who this lady is? The teacher, his teacher from when he was little, who invited him and was instrumental in his coming along. This is Misha. That's Misha there and his wife. Misha was an international pop star in all the countries of the former Soviet Union in the late 1990s and in the early 2000s. He'd been a star from since he was 7. He just started winning singing competitions like there was no tomorrow. He didn't have to study at school. The teachers all gave him great grades because he was a superstar. And so he came to believe in himself. He was full of pride. He went to music college, naturally, because he was very talented. He said, I didn't have to study at music college. I was even a star there. And then some of his friends from music college, they formed a band to sing at weddings because they get quite a lot of money at weddings. People are boozed up, feeling generous. And so he thought that was a great idea. So he became the lead singer of this band. But what he liked most about weddings is that they had a lot of alcohol. So even though he was a young man, he became an alcoholic. He says, I used to drink all I could there, and then I'd take some bottles home with me. And what made him feel really cool was that he could drink a lot and not get drunk. Well, all the other boys, they got drunk easy. So he thought that was great. Well, this band went on to superstardom in the countries of the former Soviet Union. The band was called Freestyle. It was a pop band. He says, we were all alcoholics. They did big concerts to sold-out stadiums. He said, we would just lip-sync. We were so drunk. We couldn't sing a note. We would just lip-sync. He said, no one ever found out. It was a problem, though, when wealthy people engaged us for weddings because there was a close-up, you couldn't be drunk. Anyway, by now he had married his first wife. This is his second wife on the screen. And his first wife was mad in love with him. He loved her dearly, but his alcoholism had become too much for her, and she said, you need to get help. Well, a friend said to him, look, I'm coming on Sunday to pick you up. I'm taking you to my church. So he did. It was a Pentecostal church, Misha tells us, and he says the Sunday I arrived, they were waving flags and everyone was shouting at the top of their lungs, Jesus is Lord, hallelujah. He said, this was very bad for me because I was really badly hungover. But he says at the end, the pastor made a call for people who needed to repent. And I knew that I needed to repent. Misha says, I knew very little, but I knew that I needed to repent. So he came to the front, the pastor prayed for him and he repented. So Misha became a Christian, but he still kept the pride in his heart. Eventually they found out he was a musician. They needed a drummer and there was no one around and they asked who could play the drums. Well, Misha could play any instrument. So they said, oh, yeah, I can play the drums. So Misha became the drummer in the band. Then they needed a singer and they asked around. They had no singers to be the lead singer. And Misha said, well, I've done a bit of singing. So he was playing the drums and singing, being the lead singer. And eventually they discovered the full breadth of Misha's musical talents. And so he became the worship leader of a very large Pentecostal church. In full-time ministry, fully engaged in missionary work, he would go and visit other cities, other towns, and he would give Bible studies. He was a ministry leader. But, in his heart, he still had pride. and he would still drink now and then. He had never kicked the habit fully. And one day some of the people that he looked up to as more spiritual said to him, Misha, you need to grow more in Christ. You've been a member here for some years. You need to grow more in Christ. This really challenged Misha. But what Misha did is he, instead of responding in the right way, he became more and more anxious and concerned, and he started drinking more and more, and he returned to having a drinking bout. Over time, he also started committing adultery with some of the church members. No one knew, he says, only God knew. But he says, even though I was a church person, to use his words, even though I was a church person, I was still living like I did in the world, except I hid behind my music in the world, but now I hid behind my music in the church. And I hadn't surrendered my pride to God. Eventually, the guilt of what he was doing in the church got the better of him to the extent that he became, he just gave it all up. He said, okay, I'm finished with you, look, fend for yourselves, I'm out of here. And he says he went fully into the world. And when he went fully into the world, he went fully back into alcohol. Not only that, but hard drugs came into his life. And he involved his beautiful wife as well. In fact, his wife died from a drug overdose. As you can imagine, Misha was distraught, guilty. Just all he did was he wanted to die. And the courts had taken away custody of his only son. He had nothing to live for. He was in and out of hospitals because he was so ill from the drug abuse, in and out of drug rehab centres. Nothing seemed to help. And then he found a 12-step recovery program. A 12-step recovery program is a Christ-centered, gospel-based recovery program. And his accountability partner in that program said to him, Misha, you need God. Misha said, I have God. He still considered himself a Christian. He said, no, you need to develop a better relationship with God. And so Misha, through prayer, he realized he had never given his life totally to Christ, that he had still too much pride in his heart. He had never surrendered, and he did that. And after he did that, this woman came into his life, Svetlana. She's a lovely woman. I met her, and she had 3 sons. Misha says, I didn't think I deserved to be a husband again. I didn't think that I deserved to have a family again. But God sent me a big family. Not only that, but his son from his previous wife came back to live with him. And so his life was full again. So Misha, well, here he is singing. He sang at our program the first time in years that he had sung a worship song. The first time in years. And Misha and his wife made a decision to be baptized as well. They gave their hearts to the Lord, fully surrendered because they understood the gospel. This young man is Oleg. He doesn't look very happy. That's because he's very ill with thyroid cancer. In fact, if all has gone well, he may have returned from Kiev where he was having an operation for his thyroid cancer. Well, here you see me preaching on the day of Oleg's baptism. Here he's being baptized. Now, Oleg, go back to Oleg. Oleg lived in a town near the front. His apartment building was shelled and collapsed completely. When he came home from work, he found just only the rubble, and his mother was dead under the rubble. He said that the people who had attacked the town fired warning shots when the rescuers came to try to save people, to tell people to stay away, to not rescue anyone. And it was 24 hours before they allowed the rescue crews to come in, just to show that they were in control now, that they had taken over that area. His mother was dead. He was left with nothing, and so he fled. It took him weeks to get to Poltava. He travelled hanging on to the outside of freight cars, out exposed in the elements. He walked, but finally he got to Poltava, because in Poltava he knew he had a grandfather. But when he got to Poltava, he found out that his grandfather had died. And so he tried to find work, he tried to beg some money, but there was nothing at all for him. He found a little scrap of yellow paper that had a job ad on it. Come and work for me, I'll give you I'll feed you and give you free board. So he did that. And the work was looking after pigs. It's a bit like the story of the prodigal son, isn't it? And at first they treated him well. They fed him, they gave him free board, didn't pay him anything. But then his landlord, as he calls him, started to refuse to give him food. Of course, he wasn't paid and was still expected to look after the pigs. He said he got a bundle of grain, of the food for the pigs, and he made an outdoor fire and he tried to cook it to make some sort of cereal because he was so hungry. And the owner of the pigs came by. He caught him in the act, accused him of stealing the grain, and yelled and abused him and said, "How dare you? You've stolen from the pigs. What are they going to eat?" And Oleg he said there was a mountain of hundreds of kilograms of grain there, and I'd only taken this amount. Well, he was wandering through the city one day when he came across some people working at a church, and he asked for help. They gave him help, and he was interested in learning more about Jesus Christ and the Bible and the gospel. And so when they saw his interest, they offered to study the Bible with him as well. This was wonderful for Oleg. He had cancer. He believed he was going to die. He was so hungry and desperate. He had faced so much danger. He was looking for some hope in his life. Well, the problem was that where he was staying with his landlord and the pigs was 30-something kilometres outside of the city, and the Bible study was in the city. He says, "I didn't know what to do." Because I asked my landlord, he wouldn't even give me a bus fare into the city so I could study the Bible. He said, "But I had a prayer written out, and I took it out, and I read it before I went to bed, because in the morning I had to get to my Bible study. And as I read my prayer, it gave me peace, and I went to bed." He said, "The next day, I walked the 30-something kilometres all the way into the city so I could study the Bible and learn the gospel." The man with whom he studied then gave him, when he realised what had happened, gave him money so he could have some money for bus fares. Well, Oleg came to our program as well, and by the grace of God, he was baptised also. These were the people who were baptised. Oleg's not there; he was baptised separately. There were 27 plus Oleg makes 28, and there's plenty more people who are planning to be baptised by the grace of God in the not too distant future. They dress up in uniforms there, and women wear a headscarf. It's a cultural thing. And here they are, and with Dr. Rodionov and with myself. So there was a wonderful opportunity that we had in Ukraine. We didn't know that we were going to work amongst refugees from the war, and that God would have such a wonderful harvest there. We didn't know that we'd be working with drug addicts and people who'd had very troubled and difficult lives, even in crime. But not only did we have the opportunity of working with them, but we got to see the transforming power of God's love in their lives. And that was just a great, humbling privilege for Philip and for myself to know that we were part of God's plan, even though a small part, for these people. And it's a wonderful privilege for all of us who are part of the great Good News Unlimited family, this great gospel-loving family who provides support through our attendance, participation, volunteering, through prayers, through financial means, through whatever means possible, to know that the harvest is rich. And, every time that God has sent me overseas, it has been unexpected. I didn't know last year in the middle of the year that I'd be ministering to a community of Rwandan refugees. I didn't know that I'd be ministering to people who were fleeing a war zone. But what a privilege it is that God puts us in the right places when we have his right message. So I'd like to thank everybody and ask you to keep praying for these beautiful people. There's a lot more work to be done. and may God's name be praised.
To help you understand God's Word in a whole new way, go to goodnewsunlimited.com. You can sign up there to get your free devotional delivered to you each day. This program has been paid for by the partners and friends of Good News Unlimited. Word spreads fast.